Hello everybody, my name is Professor Dr. Wolfgang Georg Arlt. I'm the CEO of COTRI, which is China Outbound Tourism Research Institute. I'm very happy to join the conference, and I will give you a brief overview about the situation of Chinese outbound tourism and the trends before looking forward to have a talk with Simon Lehmann about what all that means, especially for VR for short-term rentals. So let's have a look at a few slides. So short-term rentals and the Chinese outbound market in post-COVID-19 times, which we all hope will come very soon. So COTRI, the China Outbound Tourism Research Institute, has a history of more than 15 years, and we are working for companies all over the world, helping the companies basically to understand how to find Chinese customers, how to make them happy, and how to earn money in the process. And so we are working for government organizations, national tourism organizations, or regional tourism organizations, for private companies in hospitality, in transportation, attractions, retail, and of course also in as part of hospitality for the rental of apartments and other short-term vacational rentals. So if you're interested to learn more about us, have a look at china-outbound.com. Something which might be interesting for you is the CTT China Tourism Training, which we have developed together with the Hong Kong Polytechnical University, which will give you much more details in understanding the markets and what we can do in this little brief conference. A few words about myself. I've been working with China all my life, and I started out as being a tour operator myself, bringing Germans to China and then Chinese people to Europe. And since 15 years we have the COTRI, and we work as a consultancy. And until a few weeks ago, I also have been a professor at the German University for International Tourism Management. Just in March, I retired from that position. And as you can see on the slide, I have quite a number of hats I'm wearing, working with different international organizations. So let's look at some trends in Chinese outbound tourism before, and what we can see what will happen after the SARS-CoV-2 is happening to all of us. First, numbers. As you probably know, China is by far the biggest outbound tourism source market. And if you look at the numbers starting 20 years ago, we had about 10 million outbound trips, and 2019 we had about 170. And also what you can see, the red part of the columns, this is rest of the world, meaning trips going beyond Hong Kong, Macau, Taiwan. And so you can see that especially in this decade, which just finished, most of the growth came not from people traveling to Hong Kong, Macau, Taiwan, but going further beyond what we call Greater China. For 2020, our forecast is that we will reach the same results, that a lot of the trips which were not taken in the first half of the year are not cancelled but just postponed and will be taken in the second half of the year or in 2021. So for 2021 we see another nice growth rate of 12% and reaching 190 million border crossings by that year. Which of course does not mean that this is 170 or 190 million different people. Many people take several trips or even a lot of trips per year. So the first trend is what we can see, what we saw before, and what we will also see in the future is there is a ongoing segmentation. So the Chinese tourist doesn't exist. So, and also very important to understand that when we talk about Chinese outbound tourists, especially those going beyond Hong Kong, Macau, Taiwan, we talk about 10% of the Chinese population. Only 10% of the Chinese have a passport. Not because they can get one, but if you don't have money to travel internationally, there's no point in having a passport. So this is the group of people we are dealing with. The important top 10% of the Chinese. And also segmentation means, among other things, that more kids are traveling, more older people are traveling, and especially after the virus, as one effect of that, more families will travel together, which of course is good news for the fact that people will maybe not stay in hotel rooms, but rather in apartments. Second trend is that we see more customized and self-organized tours. We used to have this black and white situation. You had the stupid package tour people, 45 in one coach, jumping out of the coach, taking a photo, having a Chinese meal, and then going further. And on the other hand, the individual travelers speaking English, educated, interested in local situation. This, of course, was never true so clearly, but now we see that there's a rather a development that we have three different kinds of travel organizations. You still have the package tours, mostly for new travelers, for persons from second or third or fourth tier cities in China traveling for the first time to Europe. And we have the self-organized travelers, but in between you have more and more the segment of customized tours, of small groups of people who use a tour operator, but that they get a tour according to their specific wishes. And again, of course, that can also include staying in an apartment rather than in a hotel. The third trend, clearly, which has been pushed by the development of the last few months, is from quantity to quality. So that in connection with slowing down and having more experience, there's also a growing interest in authentic experiences, in learning more about the local culture, in having more connection to nature. So we can say less bling bling, less just showing off, and more interested in real life based on the experience, how precious and fragile life might be. And in terms of money, well, you can see from the graph clearly the Chinese are not only in numbers of people the biggest source market, but also in spending. So in 2018, they spent a cool $277 billion on international travel. This is more, as you can see, that the number 2, number 3, United States and Germany together. So the fourth trend is that obviously there's more and more information available. So from the destinations part, from the companies, we all have been investing in social media, marketing, in websites, in familiarization trips, or in road shows, taking part in fairs. So there are lots of TV programs about travel. So Chinese know much more about destinations, and you can find sophisticated travelers discussing on Chinese social media what is the best place to eat tiramisu in Rome. So don't think that all Chinese are coming out of the woods and have no idea about what we are doing. So they know much more about Europe than we know normally about China. And so this will continue to be the case. Of course, post-virus it will be necessary to add information, at least for some time, about the high level of safety and hygiene in your properties and in the destinations to be visited. The fifth trend is ongoing increase in the use of technology and of cashless payments. So we have all these little gadgets and machines and apps which help to overcome the language gap, so that you can put your smartphone on top of a menu and you will then find a Chinese translation on your smartphone, or you can have audio translators where you say a sentence in Chinese, does this apartment have air conditioning, and it is then speaking in English, Portuguese, French, whatever you want. And the other one, which has been pushed a lot further now with the development of the last few months, is cashless payment. So in many places in China, nobody is accepting cash anymore. Try to pay a taxi with cash in Shanghai or Beijing. That was impossible already last year, and now nobody wants to touch cash anymore. So everybody is paying with Alipay or WeChat Pay. So if you are engaging with the Chinese market, this is something you have to do, is that you are able to accept this kind of payment. And the last trend I want to talk about is the only one where this trend has been reversed by the virus, where all the other trends we just talked about have been there before, and they have rather been reinforced by the last few months. But this one is that we had in the last few years a development where it became easier and easier for the Chinese to travel in terms of visa. Many countries offered visa-free approach, or a visa on arrival, or an electronic visa, so that or a multiple entry visa, so it became much easier for Chinese to travel. And also you had more and more direct air connections from second-tier airports to second-tier airports. So from, let's say, Chengdu to Prague, or from Hangzhou to Edinburgh, something like that. This, of course, has changed dramatically. At the moment, most borders are closed and most airline connections are grounded. So this is something which will take some time, some months, in the case of the United States, maybe even longer, before we are back to normal. But of course, if we look forward to next year and beyond, we will have again the situation that for Chinese, visa is not such a big problem as it was before. But this is the only new hurdle which has come up unfortunately, from the virus. So, summary, the basic trends of China outbound tourism will continue, except the ease of traveling in terms of visa and connectivity. For short-term rentals, that means that these are mostly good news, because there's a new emphasis on family, on nature, on authenticity, on small groups, on doing meaningful things with your life. All this helps that people say, okay, let's stay together, let's have some more time together, and of course staying in an apartment or something like that, a house, chalet, makes this also easier than staying in a couple of hotel rooms separated from each other. So you find at the bottom a quote, CNN quoted me in February: "Travel is closely linked with your social status in China. If your friends talk about famous cities, you have to be able to say, yeah, I've also been there, and share a story." This is a part of the setup of, if you want to be an important person in China, you have to have international travel experience, and so this will not stop. So thank you very much for listening to this. We have a little newsletter publication every week called COTRI Weekly. Please feel free to subscribe to that. We produced with a company in China a number of videos featuring interviews with Chinese travelers for many different topics, and if you want to get deeper into the topic, I can recommend our brand new CTT China Tourism trainee. So, and now I'm looking forward to talk to you, Simon, and let's go a bit deeper into what is the situation of VR in the Chinese market.
Now we're on to our interview, just past the presentation of Professor Dr. Wolfgang Arlt from COTRI, Chinese Outbound Tourism Research Institute. We're really excited to have Wolfgang with us today to have a clear focus on what is happening in China, where the outbreak of COVID-19 pretty much originated. So let's get straight into it. And thank you very much, Wolfgang, for joining us today. Give us a quick introduction about yourself and a quick introduction about what is the Chinese Outbound Tourism Research Institute, COTRI, providing to the travel industry.
Okay, thank you, Simon, for having me. And so my name is Wolfgang Georg Arlt, and I've been working with China for more than 40 years, I'm afraid. So that has been a very long time. And of course, as China is the #1 tourism source market in the world, this has been a big topic in the last few weeks. The virus has put a stop to this for the moment, but certainly the Chinese market is there and will come back. So therefore, COTRI is continuing to, in a nutshell, to help global companies to attract Chinese customers, to make them happy, and to earn some money in the process as well. So I'm a German. I was born in Berlin. I studied Sinology about China, and I used to be a tour operator myself back in the 1990s. And I used to be a university professor for many years, just retired from my university job, and now fully concentrating on working for COTRI.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Wolfgang. And you and I have a bit of a history, right? And maybe it's an interesting short story to share that that when I was running Interhome, I was looking at China at a potential new source market. And unfortunately, we probably were a little bit too early with China. Our country manager at the time in Poland said, hey, we need to go to China. We even got some catalogs printed. We went to a conference and to an exhibition, which where we have met you as well when you had your COTRI Awards. So this is how we met over 14 years ago, nearly. And you told me, I never forget that, and that's maybe a good start for our conversation. You said, look, Simon, it's great you're making this initiative. And like after the first 3 hours of the exhibition opening, we had no more catalogs left. And then you said to me, but I have to disappoint you, Simon, these catalogs will not be used for booking vacation rentals in Europe. They'll be used to actually heat the apartment. So, 14 years down the road, now China has become an extremely important outbound market, obviously for the global tourism industry, but also for vacation rental. And we are talking more and more about, getting Chinese coming to do vacation rentals as well, especially repeat guests. But before we go there, can you provide us some figures about Chinese outbound in general, pre-COVID-19? What happened before COVID-19 hit China?
Yeah, so as we just also have seen in the slides, so from the beginning of the new millennium, we moved from like 10 million outbound trips to now 170 million outbound trips last year. So now China is bigger in terms of trips than number 2, number 3, USA and Germany combined. And it's also in terms of spending bigger than the two combined. So last year, the Chinese spent at least $280 billion on international travel. And so important to see is that the Chinese are traveling not only for their private amusement. So there is MICE and business travel, but it's also even your leisure travel is to show your peer group, to show your friends, your colleagues, your people you're working with, that you're important, that you are somebody, so that you belong to the top 10% of the society with a passport who can afford that. So therefore, your decisions where to travel and also where to stay are always done with background of telling this to other people and bragging or showing off, or showing that you have either lots of money staying in very expensive places, or you have taste, or you stay in a boutique hotel, or you're a modern person like staying in a VR, so that you're independent and experienced traveler. So this is something. So traveling, even leisure travel, is not such a private thing where you just do what you want, but it's always connected to prestige, gaining prestige, and showing off a bit. And that is one of the specialties of the Chinese market, which I think for our topic is very important.
Absolutely. Have you got? I mean, have you got any visibility? Obviously, this could be very interesting for the luxury vacation rental market as well, which is highly fragmented, but has some tremendous properties here in Europe and around the world where you can rent castles and things like that. But before we go deeper in this from a vacation rental standpoint, do you have, in terms of your data, any visibility to see if vacation rental is already a vertical for the Chinese outbound tourists or not? Do you have some data on that?
Yes, you can see that, of course, you still have package tours, but you still have this first-time visitors going to Europe and looking at 7 countries in 8 days, 45 people in a coach. This market is still there. So, but bigger and bigger and more important is a market where people either do a customized tour where they tell the tour operator what they want, small groups, or a family trip, or a totally FIT trip. And so you can see that on the one hand, you have families, typically, for instance, 2 couples and their child traveling together, or you have 3 generations, grandparents, parents, kids traveling together, that they rather want to have an apartment where they have a living room, where they can have breakfast without dressing up properly, and where they have more social interaction. So this is one market where you can see more and more people with growing experience, so that they are daring to do that, and they go shopping and buy their own food stuff for the breakfast or something. And on the other hand, as you said, you have the luxury end of the market where you have service apartments where you have people say, okay, I want to live in my suites. I want to have several rooms, but I also want to have somebody cleaning and bringing fresh linen and room service and so on. So and of course, being king and queen for a weekend, renting a castle and having a big feast with servants dressed up in historical costumes and stuff to show off, that's also something. But I think that, and you can see, especially for younger people, shopping has become less and less important, and especially now after the virus, I think the idea to do something meaningful will be getting more and more important, and also the idea to get closer to the people. So this is, in our research, this idea of living like a local, if only for a few days, becomes more and more important, and therefore people want to stay in a private property where they are living among local people and not staying in a Sheraton where you are far away from the local people. And if you're staying in a Sofitel, they all look the same all over the world. You don't even know which country you are. So
that's it. That's super interesting. So that means obviously Airbnb had a good source market, but they never really became that successful for this particular source market. But it sort of underlines that the travel behavior is also going to change even more so post-COVID, to say, hey, we need to travel more meaningfully, do something, with a great experience, which is great to see. Can you tell us anything about trip frequency and sort of average shopping spending that these Chinese tourists have, and how often do they travel, and what sort of their average length of stay?
Yeah, so again, we talk about the top 10% of the Chinese society. So no more than that. Only 10% have a passport and enough money to travel. So for these people, what we normally say is that they're money rich but time poor. So Chinese have very little time to travel. They have only maybe 10 days paid holidays. Many are entrepreneurs or independent working, so they don't have holidays. And many people are saying, well, if I work in China, I earn a lot of money. So if I don't work, I don't care how much I have to spend for the expenses of the trip. I'm not earning money the time I'm not working. This is where I lose money. So that's why per day, Chinese spend more money than anybody else. And of course, you have very different levels of what kind of people you're talking about. But what you can find is if you offer something with value, they will pay for it. So if you can convince Chinese customers that it is value for money, they are much more eager and willing to spend bigger amounts of money for that because they have only so little time. And then of course we have a lot of business travelers where there's so much Chinese investment overseas, a lot of Chinese companies here in Europe and also in the United States. So people travel regularly where they also, of course, prefer to have a feeling a home away from home, or also have a place where they can have easily some business meetings so that they have a living room where they can sit around the table, maybe without not everybody seeing who's talking with whom, things like that. So this is also, of course, so therefore, the Chinese certainly want to know exactly what they get for their money. But if you can convince them that the service is good, and if you can convince them that you have prepared yourself for the Chinese market, that is an important part. That they don't have to be afraid that the quality will not be good or that you're a criminal robbing them, whatever. So that is something you have to do. Then they will be very good customers. Also, you can sell them a lot of extra services. So they will be more interested to say, okay, we have a chauffeured limousine for you. So typically a couple going to staying in London and then going to Oxford and Cambridge to see which college their son or daughter should study at. So that you can offer them, okay, we organize for you the meetings with the colleges, we organize for you the chauffeured limousine with a Chinese speaking driver, and maybe we also organize some tennis lessons or riding a horse or things like that. So if you can offer this kind of things, people will be, Chinese will be more interested in buying such extra services.
Well, that's super valuable input, and that's something we've always, dealt with or trying to do as well. There are certain tourist destinations who are very good in upselling additional services, and some aren't. But for this particular customer, I think this is great input because they only travel so short, so they need to have convenience when they're there. So that makes a ton of sense. I know you're focusing on the outbound tourism from China. But still, do you have some visibility on the domestic vacation rental business in China? Do you think that's something that is becoming bigger and bigger, and so that helps the people to educate into the product as well?
Yes. This is I think the key point you mentioned when we talked about this market 14 years ago. The point was we had to explain to them what are we talking about. Nobody had a second home. Nobody was renting a house for a holiday or a chalet or something like that. So VR was an alien concept at that time. This has completely changed. So in China, it is very common. So I have been staying in VR when I attended a fair in Beijing last year. So this is now very common, and you book it online. And as the Chinese are not using cash anymore, everything is done with mobile payment, with Alipay and WeChat Pay. Also, the payment is very easy. And safe for both sides, secure for both sides. So this is now very common. So the Chinese have learned that how this works, and lots of Chinese people do that when they are traveling domestically in China.
That's interesting. So that would then you would also recommend that any overseas vacation rental companies targeting Chinese customers that they also have WeChat Pay and Alibaba Pay as well, and also for communication. I guess it's very important.
This is absolutely necessary. If you want to convince Chinese customers that you have been preparing for them, that you care for them, this is a #1 thing. Because in China, really, China is by now almost a cashless society. And now with the virus, this of course has been reinforced. And there are plans now that, for instance, in Hangzhou, which is the city where Alibaba and Alipay is a home, is based, they said that from next year, there will be no more cash in Hangzhou. So they will not, nobody will accept. And now even today, try to have a taxi or a Didi, which is an Uber in China. Try to pay with cash or with credit card. No way. It is mobile phone or nothing. So therefore, this is absolutely crucial. And it used to be before the Chinese had Union Pay credit card, and they were happy if a shop was accepting Union Pay credit card, you could say this is an extra service for you. Now this is a requirement. The Chinese will say, if you don't accept mobile payment, I go somewhere else. Full stop.
Interesting point. And as you said, COVID-19 accelerated the cashless transaction even more. So that's going to be incredible. Now, we're obviously, anything that is related to COVID-19, everybody looks over to China, where, you know, it's presumably coming from, and China had some drastic measures. Do you see now, while obviously restrictions have been slowly lifted, have you seen any outbound tourism? Is anything moving? Is anything coming back?
Well, at the moment, you are forbidden to enter or leave China practically. So because the Chinese are afraid that a second wave is coming, and the cases at the moment in China are almost all of them brought back by overseas Chinese coming from other countries. So maybe from Europe or United States. So there is no outbound tourism at the moment. Nobody's going to Hong Kong. If you enter Hong Kong, you have to have 2 weeks quarantine. But what you could see is on the April 4th, that was a public holiday in China. That was when the first restrictions were lowered. And you could see that nature resource like the Yellow Mountains were full of people. You saw maybe the photos, again, standing shoulder to shoulder like that, as if nothing had happened. So, and all the surveys show the Chinese are very eager to travel. And the trips which they have not done in the last 3 or 4 months are not canceled, they are postponed. So in the second half of the year, when hopefully things go a little bit back to normal and we will open the borders again, at the moment we don't let them in as well, we open the border again and the air connections are coming back. So they certainly they will be eager if they perceive it's safe to travel, to travel and to do the trips which they couldn't do in the last few months. So therefore, if hopefully in a few months, especially we have some medicine or some vaccine or something, so that it gets less scary, then prepare for a big wave of Chinese visitors coming, so catching up on what they left out in the first half of the year.
But would it be fair to say that because of what you just said, is that this will result into this, in everything else that is happening in our industry as well? Everything will be focused domestic. So once certain restrictions are released, then people will at least travel domestic. You need to have a change of scenery. You need to get out of where you were if you can afford it, because we see a lot of DMOs, especially the European DMOs, who are now, for example, Switzerland. A good friend of mine is on the board of Lucerne Tourism, and obviously half of their spending in terms of marketing dollars is China. And now it's a waste of time to spend money for Lucerne in China because obviously nobody's coming. And therefore their entire marketing spend is going to go for the domestic travels. Now you, as a Swiss person, can go to Lucerne without having overseas tourists there because they're not there. So they obviously go and focus on will we see the same in China now, that there will be a lot of focus for domestic travel?
I think in the short run, yes. In the short run, but at the moment, the Chinese are told China is the safest place on earth. We don't have the virus anymore. Whereas the people in America and in Europe and in Africa, they are suffering from this. So therefore, and also it is something patriotic to support the local economy, to spend money inside China. So I think this is something for the next few months, when there is practically no way to travel to other countries. This will happen, but I think this is something for the next 3-4 months. But for the later part of the summer and the rest of the year, this will be different. And also one thing we have to realize is also Chinese are less sun seekers. So many rich Chinese people, they live in warm part of China, in Shanghai or Guangzhou. So for them, especially if it is city tourism, which for VR I think is of course important, they also come in the winter. So therefore I think some trips which were supposed to happen now in April, they will do in October or in December. So because it is not so much that they say, okay, I only want to travel with the sunshine, because I give you one example. When we talk about the Chinese market, how diverse it is. Just so 50% of the kids on this planet learning how to play the piano are Chinese. 40 million kids in China learn to play the piano. And many of them are interested to travel with their parents, for instance, to Europe and visit the museums and the birthplaces and the monuments for Bach and Beethoven and Mozart and so on. So this is one niche market. And if you are in a city which has some relation to one of the classical music composers or famous orchestra or something, so if you can say, okay, you can rent a nice place here, and I can organize for your kid that can have some piano lessons with some famous guy, or you can have lunch with a member of the local orchestra. This will be great. And this is something you cannot organize yourself from China easily. But if you are, if your property is in Bonn or in Salzburg or in other places,
Vienna.
yes. So that is something you will probably be able to organize that thing. So therefore, I think when we talk about the Chinese market, there are so many people here don't know much about China. Don't think that the Chinese are so ignorant about us. So they know a lot, and this can be music, this can be football when we start again to play, this can be many other topics. So therefore, if you can say, okay, what is the extra service you're offering on top of having a nice place to stay, that will be certainly a very good business.
Wow, fantastic. Now we need to watch the time and slowly wrap this up. You nearly sort of summarized or answered my question already, but we understand that anybody who wants to address one of the largest outbound markets in the world, China, going forward, I mean, this is going to be a race for revenue. This is going to be a race of customers as well. If certain seasonalities could not be met, you know, the spring season is gone, the winter season has been damaged, and now the summer season is in danger. But now any vacation rental company is looking for demand. If I would approach you as a property manager and say, I want to be successful in attracting Chinese guests coming to my destination, being winter, being in summer, whatever you have alluded to, not just warm destination, not just sun seekers, but obviously urban as well. What would you recommend property manager post-COVID to attract Chinese customers that come to our destinations?
Well, obviously, so for instance, we did an online training program for hospitality. That would be a recommendation where you get a university certificate at the end. but also if you want to go deeper, to say what kind of Chinese customers you're looking at. The Chinese tourist does not exist, like the European does not exist. So to see what can I offer is, am I rather going after young families, or am I going after small groups of friends or colleagues? So and then adapt the product, see what can I offer on extra services, what story can I tell? Storyfication, very important. So it is, as I said at the beginning, the Chinese are doing all the things they do to put it on WeChat and tell their friends about it every 2 hours of their trip. So if you can tell them why your place, your city, your apartment, the activities are something special, so they can tell their friends why it is special, that will be very good. So to look at what is there, look where is the fit with a demand in the Chinese market, and then go for that. So China is big, and there are 170 million trips. So you don't try to cover everything. But look for what is the best thing I can offer, what is fitting to which demand, and then go for it. And so we have been doing this for many people in many different industries, of course. Happy to support it, and it can be successful, especially now post coronavirus. I think more Chinese are saying, okay, life is short, life is fragile, life is something you shouldn't waste on bling bling shopping. And so going to live with the people, have a deeper level of experience, this is what more Chinese will look for than ever before.
Thank you, Wolfgang. That could have not been a better message for the vacation rental industry. It's a big market, it's a complex market. COTRI and your research institute can obviously help. We have all the links for your website and everything else also from your presentation. So if there's any more know-how to be generated, then you're the right person to contact, help with distribution, and answer some questions for the Chinese outbound market. In that sense, I can only thank you so much. It's actually unfortunate that a crisis brought us back together again, Wolfgang, a friendship that we have established a long time ago, but we take every opportunity. So it was great to have you today on our conference, and hopefully we'll stay in touch more frequently than we have in the last 15 years as well. So
I'm sure we will. Thank you very much for having me, and everybody stay healthy.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.